Hey everyone, Randy with Extreme Sandbox. Welcome to this episode Inside the Sandbox. Today we're doing one of our pre-op inspections again. I've got Alex Dahl here from Road Machinery and Supply. It's our Komatsu distributor. We've done a few of these videos. Today we're going to be covering a Bulldozer pre-op inspection. So you've probably seen us do several of the how to operate. It's just as important, if not more important, to do a good pre-op inspection. I think I said all these videos up front. I'm not an expert. I show you kind of what we've learned out here, but it's really just about learning. So I bring Alex out here because he's a wealth of knowledge, so he's gonna do a walkthrough. Typically, our pre-op inspections are broken into three categories. The first one's a general walk around, just purely visual. It's a big picture, looking for leaks, looking for damage. The two I call is my compartment check. That's where I'm actually opening doors. I am checking fluids, things like that. And then my third is the operator's compartment. It's basically getting in the cab, doing my final checks there before I start the machine. So again, with that, I can't thank Alex enough for coming out here, and I'm gonna turn it over to Alex to do a pre-op inspection on our Komatsu Bulldozer.
All right, so like you said, the first step is we're gonna do, just a general walk around and kind of just take a look at everything. So let's start right up at the blade up here. So the first thing I like to do is, take a look at your blade and look at the face of it, make sure there's no, holes or dents or anything like that. If there is, maybe you want to consider patching them or, figuring out how you want to go about that. Another thing to look for is your cutting edge right here. Make sure you don't have a bunch of missing bolts or, you don't have a cutting edge at all, and just kind of the overall wear of it too. If it's getting pretty flat and pretty worn down, it might be time to flip it over and use the other side of the cutting edge, or possibly even get a whole new one depending on how wore each side is. And then we'll kind of go on over to the tracks. So a good thing to look for here again is take a look at the tracks themselves. Make sure none of your track pads are missing, none of the bolts that hold them on are missing or loose or anything like that. And then kind of get down and just take a look around. Make sure if your track seems real sloppy, like there's a lot of sag in it, go ahead and take this cover off right here, and there's a grease zerk back in there that you can use to tighten it up to the correct tension. And just take a look at your rollers, make sure you have rollers and they're not missing or anything, and no damage to them. And then all these rock guards right here, make sure there's nothing jammed in there, or maybe clean it out if there is. That'll help extend the life of everything. And then same thing with your idler too up here. Just kind of take a look at it, and if anything just seems out of place, give someone a call, be like, hey, does this seem right? Or call your distributor where you got the piece of equipment from and ask them. They're more than likely going to have someone there that'll be able to tell you what it's probably supposed to look like or not supposed to look like. And then we'll go and take a look a little bit further back here at your final. And biggest thing on your final here is to take a look at these teeth. And it's a lot harder to see these teeth than on like an excavator or something like that, just because the track obviously covers them up. But the ones that you can see, right here, and the couple up in here, make sure that they're not missing or broken or super pointy. If they're super pointy, they're wore down quite a ways and they probably should be replaced. And then, on the final itself, make sure there's no oil coming out of anywhere, or the, bolts aren't missing, or there's cracks or big dents in the cover or anything like that, because anything like that will definitely cause you some big headaches if you don't get it looked at right away. Kind of taking a look from the back side here, pretty much the same, tracks on both sides. Just kind of take a look at them, make sure there's no leaks. You got your fan in here, you got your fuel tank, your hydraulic tank. Just take a look under, make sure nothing's leaking or anything like that. And same thing with under the machine. If you want to get down and take a look, make sure there's no big puddles of something, and if there is, make note of it. And when you go on to the next step of opening up compartments and checking fluid levels, you can go ahead and see if you can figure out what's going on. And then we'll go over to this track. And again, same thing as the other side, you know, just kind of general overview and make sure, you know, like I said, track pads are in good shape and the track tension's good, and, you know, look at your finals, your rollers, and, you know, the whole thing. Just give it a good once over and make sure nothing's, you know, completely wrong or anything like that.
That's a good example of some damage right in there.
Yeah, I mean, something like this, I mean, this isn't going to stop any type of like performance or, you know, really do anything really harmful to the machine, but, you know, just something to note in case, you know, you need to note that type of stuff before your shift or anything like that. And then kind of coming back up to the front here on the back side of the blade, you know, just kind of take a good look of all your hydraulic cylinders and all your pins and bushings in here. You know, if they don't look like they've been greased in a while, maybe you give them a couple shots of grease. Or a lot of times when these cylinders leak, they leak right around this seal right here. So if you see a bunch of dirt or hydraulic oil just hanging out right here, you know, maybe snap a picture of it, send it to your boss, be like, hey, notice this, you know, maybe we want to have someone come and fix it or take a look at it or what have you. And I mean, all the cylinders are the same, you know, just kind of take a look right up at the front right here, or if you can see where the hoses connect to it. I know it's kind of hard because they're hidden under all these panels, but if you can get those off, if you see a leak, you know, that's another good thing to be looking for. So then we'll head on over to the other side and start opening up some compartments. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up this side compartment right here, and in here you got your fuel filter, or one of your fuel filters. You got your air filter and your dipstick right here for your oil. Some of them are painted red, some of them are not, so you might just have to do a little bit of some investigating. Otherwise, if you look in your operation and maintenance manual that comes with the machine, that should tell you where to find it or give you a general idea of where it's at. Another good thing to look for, like this right here, you can see this is a gauge for your air filter to kind of tell you how restricted it is. So you can see that the yellow is relatively far out and getting close to the point where it's telling you that you should change your filter. So that's another good thing to note, and make sure, you know, if it is in the red, that maybe you take this off and at the bare minimum blow it out, you know, blow all the dust out from the filter and stick it back in, and then reset this after you do that. You know, don't just clean it off and then stick it back in here, because then, you know, the next guy jumps in here, he's like, oh, got a bad filter or something like that, and, you know, you're just kind of chasing yourself. Another thing to look for is on your fuel filter right here, especially in these colder climates where it gets well below freezing for multiple months. Make sure there's no ice in here or water, and if there is, you can unscrew this little white screw right here and kind of drain it out and get that water out of there, because obviously water isn't good for a diesel engine. And then just kind of, you know, look it over and make sure you don't see any leaks or anything like that that would not be good for the machine.
When you're checking that oil, are you looking for anything other than it's just there? Is there anything when you pull that dipstick? Is there?
I mean, for the most part, when you pull it out, you know, I normally just check to make sure it's there. You can get technical with it and, you know, like smell it or grab it and kind of feel it and see, you know, you can kind of tell some things from it like that, but just to kind of get an idea to make sure you can even start the thing, it's just a good idea just to check and make sure that you have some oil in there.
And then for the filter, so you don't necessarily pull the filter out, what you do want to check that is the valve there, just to if there's any debris in that. So when you pinch
this right here,
yeah.
So this is just kind of like just like an extra vent in a sense to clean out any debris. Because if you take this off, if you ever taken an air filter out, usually there's extra dust in there that isn't collected inside the filter itself, and this is just kind of where it's supposed to drain off. So you can kind of open this up and, you know, flick it around. You can kind of see some dust is coming out, and not all the time are you going to have stuff there. You might have to take the actual filter cover off and wipe it out with a rag or what have you. So then we'll move on to this other compartment back here. So in this compartment, is where you're gonna have your DEF fluid. Very important to not run out of DEF fluid, because then you're gonna be really upset. So, you know, just take it off, and the gauge is kind of right down on the side right here on this machine. You know, it might vary from machine to machine and where the tank is placed as to where the sight glass is, but you know, just take a look, make sure it's not completely empty. Maybe top it off if you have an extra jug laying around or what have you. You know, make sure there's no leaking lines or anything that are gonna drain the tank, you know, before you used all the DEF, I guess. Yeah, whatever. Then in here, you got your batteries right here. You have your washer fluid tanks and your hydraulic tank lines. So, you know, make sure if you got a rainy day or muddy or what have you, you got plenty of washer fluid in here. Batteries, you know, you can kind of take them up, look at them, make sure the terminals aren't corroded or they have a bunch of that green algae looking stuff on them, because that can definitely cause some problems for you. Also, with your coolant overflow tank right here, you know, make sure it's at the full mark, and if it's not, add the correct type and correct amount of fluid to bring it up to that level. And then for your suction lines right here for your hydraulic tank, you know, again, just make sure they're not leaking or cut or cracked or anything like that. And you know, if they are leaking, you can go ahead and give them, you know, snug them up and see if that helps, because a lot of the times they just work themselves loose over time, you know, like a lot of stuff does. And you know, you got your sight glass right here for your hydraulic tank. You know, make sure you can at least see something in it. There's a little red circle in this one right here. You usually want that hydraulic oil at least to that circle. You know, obviously if there's nothing in the sight glass, you definitely are going to want to add some hydraulic oil to it. Then we'll head on over to the other side. There's one more compartment. So in here you have your hydraulic filter and your main control valve for your dozer. So, you know, just make sure your filter's not leaking or cracked, and you know, sometimes they'll have the hours written on it and the date that it was last replaced, you know. So if you haven't ran the piece of equipment in a while and you see that, oh, this is from 8 months ago, you know, maybe you want to give the filter a change and, you know, just keep things up to date. Again, make sure, you know, no leaks, no cut wires, anything like that. And then also right here, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a drain for the fuel tank, and it's a good idea to every time you fuel up and, you know, fill up your fuel tank, to drain off the tank a little bit, because a lot of times the water in the fuel will separate, and you want to drain all that water out so you don't, you know, suck it into your engine and cause more problems for you. Now we'll head on up into the cab. All right, so now that we're in your cab, you know, you want to go ahead, look around, make sure none of your windows are cracked or broken or anything like that. You know, if they are, that's obviously a safety hazard, and you want to get that fixed as soon as possible. And then another good thing to do is, you know, just grab the levers, make sure they all move freely and nothing seems like it's blocked or can't move. Another good thing to do is, you know, you can just turn the key on, you don't have to start it, and, you know, just make sure all the functions work, you know, your heater, your AC, you don't have any like error messages on your screen or anything like that. You know, you got your wipers up here and your radio over here, and just kind of give it a good once over. And then also you want to make sure that your seatbelt works and, you know, secure and good in place. You always got to wear your seatbelt. And that pretty much concludes checking over a dozer.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you, Alex, for coming out and doing that pre-op inspection. You know, a couple things. You know, first and foremost, I tell people, look at we have a Komatsu D61 dozer out here. Any manufacturer is going to have their OEM, and OEM is going to have the manual. So I think we always suggest making sure you check the manual. That's going to give you exactly what you should be checking off on the equipment. We just kind of did a generic one that would apply to most machines, but I think that's really important. The thing I really love that Alex said too is just knowing when to call in. You know, me as an operator, it's nice to have Alex who's a diesel tech out here. I'm not. But sometimes if something doesn't feel right, look right, seem right, know who to call. I know I can call Road Machinery and Supply, who's our distributor here for our Minnesota site, and I get someone like Alex that can be an expert on it. So thanks again. Please let us know. You know, a lot of it, we've said I'm not an expert at all. We love to hear from our fans. So please comment below any other tips, recommendations, advice you might have. And then check out a lot of our other videos. We have how to operate, which would be that next level on how to actually turn the key on this thing and go over the controls. So thanks a lot for tuning in. You guys have a great day.